Hello friends, welcome. Welcome to another Word of Gord. Tonight, of all nights, we're going to explore the world of poetry. So this is, in effect, Gord's first poetry show. I hope there will be many more. Poetry has been a great love of mine for 40 odd years now, perhaps a little longer. And I am greatly enamored of all kinds of poetry. And over the next little while, I'd like to share some of that love with you. I will read from relatively famous poets and relatively unknown poets. The world of poetry is something of a parallel universe in which many great things are written and read and reread and do not make it out into the larger culture, like many subcultures. It is quite self-contained. You're accustomed to mysticism and metaphysics from me, but I would like to extend that into the world of literature, the world of rhythm and texture and metaphor. Basically just for the fun of it. And I would like to dedicate the first poetry show here to Ottawa poet Rob McLennan, who inspired me once again with his enthusiasm for the world of poetry when I met him yesterday at the Small Press Book Fair. I have a tendency to get a little cynical and bedraggled as the years go by, but Rob seems eternally optimistic, and it's always a good jolt to the spirit to chat with him. So, thank you for that, Rob. Now, I'd like to start with Richard Brautigan, famous American writer from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, I would say were his main years of fame. And he wrote some wonderful, witty, short poems. Well, long ones too, but a lot of very concise diamonds of wisdom. Now, from his book Loading Mercury with a Pitchfork, in itself a great title, I think you'll agree, here's a poem called On Pure Sudden Days Like Innocence. On pure sudden days like innocence, we behold the saints and their priorities key-punched in the air. As I said, brief. Now here's a slightly longer one called Autobiography. I am standing in the cemetery at Birds, Texas. What did Judy say? God forsaken is beautiful too? A very old man who has cancer on his face and takes care of the cemetery is raking a grave in such a manner as to almost polish it like a piece of silver. An old dog stands beside him. It's a hot day, 105. What am I doing out here in West Texas, standing in a cemetery? The old man wonders about that too. My presence has become a part of his raking. I know that he is also polishing me. Now, from a formerly famous poet to a currently famous poet, someone that many people think is the greatest exponent of the poetic art in English. His name is John Ashbery, and he has published many, many fine books of poetry over the years. This one is from a recent one called Where Shall I Wander? And this poem is called The Red Easel. Say, Doc, Those swags are of the wrong period, though in harmony with the whole. You shouldn't take it too hard. Everybody likes it when the casual drift becomes more insistent, setting in order the house while writing finis to its three-decker novel. Only when the plaint of hens pierces dusk like a screen door does the omnipresent turn top-heavy. Oh, really? I thought they had names for guys like you and places to take them to. That's true, but let's not be hasty, shall we, and pronounce your example a fraud before all the returns are in? These are, it turns out, passionate and involving, as well as here to stay. Now, John Ashbery, a mystic if there ever was one. Let me turn to a Canadian poet. I think she's still a young woman, Stephanie Bolster, and her fairly recent poem, Two Bowls of Milk. And it has a rather a nice cover, so I shall Two bowls of milk. Two bowls of milk are two bowls of milk. They are round and white and have nothing to do with the moon. They have no implications of blindness or sight. They wait on the doorstep like bowls, or like things that closely resemble bowls in their stillness. The bowls do not foreshadow cats. There are two because two hands set them out, and each wanted to hold something. Milk because not water. The curve of the milk against the curve of the bowl. I do like that poem. Now, another Canadian poet, favourite of mine, David McFadden, David W. McFadden. And he has many, many fine poems. And I do love reading them. Here's one from about, 20 years ago. And it's called On the Road Again. Maybe I'll move center camera for this one. It's all part of growing up. I know Canada is the only country in the world more American than the USA. We're so stupid we accept Colonel Sanders and reject Frank O'Hara. But I was sitting at the bar in a pub in Carleton Place, Ontario, at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, April the 6th, 1976, just before the Stompin' Tom Connors concert in Smiths Falls. The guys were talking about their snowmobiles. Suddenly it happened. In spite of the ugliness of so much of our history, our culture and our lives, ugliness that will probably never end, I felt at home. My heart, normally the size of a dried plum, grew to fill the room, the town, the province, the whole damn country. And these lines came bubbling up. If I'm ever remembered, this is what I'd like to be remembered by. Toss a dart at the map of Canada. Where it lands is where you'll find me. Another Canadian poet, another fine Canadian poet, John Newlove. Passed over a number of years ago, but left us many fine lyrics. This one is from a book called The Night the Dog Smiled. And it's called The Light of History, This Rhetoric Against That Jargon. When the day comes that these cries will be ridiculous mementos, some amusing fable, ununderstandable even in the light of history, then God bless you, happy people. It would be my wish that you could not comprehend sadness or cruelty, but lived your vigorous lives in peace. There is time enough, has been, for understanding. To hell with it. So long as the green earth grows and the great stars shine, live on and love each other. Being is admirable, and the graceful trees in the wind sway in concert with you in the ever deathless world. Thank you for that, John. Now, a fine but relatively unknown contemporary writer, Jean McKay, from her book Dragonfly Fling. Quite a number of, fairly lengthy sort of prosy poetically prosy stories in this book. So I had to pick a short one. There's lots of great long ones though too. It's called See You. Off he goes into the Saturday supper time rain, the last of a string of downtown encounters. I've talked the whole day away on street corners. Smoking at the bus stop, watching the blackbirds rim the windows. Rain. Sometimes the downtown buildings feel like my bones. A warm southerly blows among them. The trains go in and out of my armpits, in and out my nose holes. I can see everything at once. Okay, I better fess up. Next poet is Stuart Ross. Fairly good friend of mine here in the GTA in Canada, and he has many great surreal and funny poems. And this one is from the collection Hey, Crumbling Balcony, Poems New and Selected, and it has funny little pictures of poodles on the cover. Like those little poodles? Well, which poem shall I read? Oh, right. Bulletin. This is quite a commentary on the poetic arts. We interrupt this poem for an important bulletin, for a stunning medical breakthrough, for a boxing match, for a glass of 1934 Chardonnay, for the discovery of life on other planets, for little Jimmy's new leg brace, for a derailed train, its passengers screaming, for an appointment with your therapist, for an empty bird's nest, for a few tips on nostril depilation, for an urgent meeting by world leaders, for a cigarette, the last in the pack, for a frayed electrical cord, for a yodeling contest, for anything, for God's sake, but the poem. Indeed, that's how some of us poets feel. Now, getting up to 15 minutes, but I'm told that I can go over 15 minutes. So, let's see, maybe one from Gord here. Let's see. A poem from somewhere. Well, let's see. We're getting out of Iraq, or so they tell us. Us Canadians were never in it, but we're still in Afghanistan. But here's one I wrote in 2003 about going into Iraq for, I don't know how many times, is it the third time now? We just can't stay out of that country. What is it we want there? It's not the people, it's not the government, it must be maybe it's the oil. Or maybe it's the oil, I don't know. All that stuff in the museums, is that what we want? Anyway, war party. The oligarchy of anger always needs secretaries, fastidious compositors of creaky goodwill, whispering about whiskey and the kindness of danger. Soft biscuits of dogma before the evening congeals. Oh, here's another one about poetry. Over and out. The poet craves escape from simile and metaphor, a frankness totally devoid of image, an Eden without words, action minus motive, energy in love with itself. It's easy to agree. I know I do. Anyway, those are from the little chapbook Just Around the Future by Gord and Finn. That's me. Anyway, Gord's first poetry show. Hope you liked it. I hope the darn thing will upload. And farewell until next time, friends around the world.